Good morning. It's Friday, April 10th. Before we get started, I want to lift up Sierra and her baby. Both have a virus and extremely hard time breathing, and they left this morning to the hospital. And it never affects us as far as until it hits someone that we love, that we know and love. So lift up Sierra and her baby, please. We're in Revelation, but before I read this now, I want to just preface it with this. I've studied over the years Revelation and listened under certain people, and as scholars or preachers that taught out of Revelation. And what I want you to know is every one of them had a different perspective. And you're gonna see why this morning as we go through these verses. So let me read verses 12 through 16 to you. Now remember, this is John now on the island of Patmos getting visions. He said, I turned around to see the voice that was speaking to me. And when I turned, I saw 7 golden lampstands. And among the lampstands was someone like a son of man, dressed in a robe reaching down to his feet, and with a golden sash around his chest. His head and hair were white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were like blazing fire. His feet were like bronze glowing in a furnace, and his voice was like the sound of rushing waters. In his right hand he held 7 stars, and out of his mouth came a sharp, double-edged sword. His face was like the sun shining in all its brilliance. Now, the question I have are, who did John see? Who or what were the 7 golden lampstands? Who or what were the 7 stars in the right hand? Who or what was this person that John is describing, with something coming out of his mouth and his eyes bright and sure doesn't sound like a human. So I'm certain it would be almost impossible for us to know what John was talking about if Jesus hadn't explained it to him. Now we assume that this was Jesus that he's trying to describe here, but boy, why did Jesus look so different? Why was he so different? Let's read 17 and 18 to see what happens. When I saw him, I fell at his feet as though dead. Then he placed his right hand to me and said, Do not be afraid. I am the first and the last. I am the living one. I was dead, and behold, I am alive forever and ever, and I hold the keys of death and Hades. It was so shocking to John, this person, that it scared him to where he just pretended he was dead, just to try and be safe. Now, it's obvious that this was Jesus as we read these next the verses that we just read, the first and the last, the Alpha and the Omega. But boy, Jesus in his resurrected body, in his glory, not so much his resurrected body, but in his glory, was overwhelming to John. Overwhelming. Now John is trying to explain this now, okay? He's trying to explain all this in the best way that he knows how. And Jesus doesn't tell him what the sword is, what all that means. Now, we do know a double-edged sword. The word is called the double-edged sword. So was that the reference of the word coming out of his mouth? We don't know. We know it's Jesus, but we don't know what Jesus looked like in his glory. But it was overwhelming. Whatever it was overwhelming. It wasn't the normal Jesus that John knew. I mean, John walked with Jesus. John was his disciple. So John would have recognized Jesus. He would have known that this is Jesus, but now he's seeing a different Jesus. He's seeing a Jesus in his glory. It's kind of like when we see God in his glory. What are we going to see? What are we going to see when we see God in his glory? Gosh. I don't know. Now, Jesus is going to explain to him now or the angel, whatever it is that's talking to him, is going to explain to John what he saw. But I want to tell you, preface ahead of time, this is the only time now in the book of Revelation that he's going to do this. After this, it's up to us to try to figure out what he's talking about. So let's read verse 19. It says, "Write therefore what you have seen, what is now and what will take place." So he's telling them, write what's happening now and write what's going to take place. So Revelation is about the past, the present, and the future. It's not just revelation of the future. It's the present, and we'll see some when we get to it, something that happened way back at the beginning, before man was even created. Verse 20, "The mystery of the 7 stars that you saw in my right hand and of the 7 golden lampstands is this." The 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, and the 7 lampstands are the 7 churches. So he explained what he saw. He explained the 7 stars are angels of the churches, and the lampstands are the churches. So remember, this is apocalyptic writing, which was common at that time for the readers. But he didn't just show them angels, and he didn't just show them the churches. He showed something that represented the angels, which was stars, and something that represented the churches, which was lampstands. So he explains to us now what this means. But again, after this, he won't. Now, here's what's interesting, and we're going to get into this tomorrow. I just want to preface it now. He said, the 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches. Sounds like an angel assigned to churches. And the lampstands are the 7 churches. So what I want you to know in this morning's devotion is that as we study Revelation, and it says, blessed if you read it, more blessed if you study it. We're still to study it, but we can't be dogmatic on it. We can't say this is exactly what's happened. So I'm not going to try to be dogmatic as we get into Revelation. There's no way that I can. So we're still going to be confused to what we're seeing, okay? But he still wants us to read it. So stay with me. Tomorrow we're going to look at angels. God bless you. Stay safe. And please pray for Sierra and her baby.